So these gentlemen will be discussing professionalising your preparation for work and life. So here it is. They're not exactly around the fireplace. It looks like around the kitchen table. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. How are you?
Yeah, look, good. I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tony. So over to us, I guess. Good on you. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, look, as Tony said, David Scott's my name, founder and CEO of BrewHub. And I'm joined today by Dr. Graeme Wright from Optimum Health Management Services. And I must confess that Graeme and I have a relationship going back some 20 odd years. He started collecting my health data in about 2004. And we've been sort of working together ever since. And we have a lot of informal conversations, Graeme and I, about preparing for work. Both mentally, physically, emotionally, and all the rest of it. And we thought, what better opportunity than to come along to Workplace Wellness and have a bit of a chat and do that publicly. So the topic we picked, which we're going to try and stay on, by the way, we'll give it a crack, is professionalising your preparation for work, which I think is one of the most underestimated areas. And when I talk to people I really admire about their workplace performance, one of the things I consistently find is that they are elite preparers. So why don't I throw to you, Wrighty, to give a very brief introduction and maybe ask the first question, what's the goal? What's the goal of preparing professionally for work?
Yeah, what a great question to start with, David. I would like to pick up on the word relationship and use that in a professional sense, not a personal sense. But the preparation that we have done a lot of in the work we do, both with elite athletes and also in the workplace, is that it's about getting organised. It's actually having a system that you can actually relate to. And everyone is a wee bit different, but I do think it's a matter of trying to find out where you are on the spectrum, and it will change. As you know, when we first started with you in 2004, you were a fresh face, it's quite hard to say, fresh face athlete. Now you are not such a fresh face athlete, but you're performing probably well above what you were something like 20 years ago. So things change. And I guess there's some ingredients that we might touch on today that will give us an insight into how that has come about.
Sure. So in terms of preparing, one of the things that Graeme and I have worked on is getting in the optimum state for work. What is the optimum state for work? What's the optimum level of arousal at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning when you have that first meeting? And there's there's varying degrees of arousal that you can prepare in, and it takes some time to figure out what that optimum level is. And there are a number of really practical steps that you can take to make sure that you're ready to go. You're ready to go in that state. Righty, how do you know if you're well prepared for work?
Well, I think first up, let's accept that preparing for work is really tough. It has got to be the ultimate endurance test because it can go for 20 years, 30 years. But I think it's a matter of reaching a state where you're trying to minimise. The best way is to minimise your level of anxiety. It's to actually get a level of calmness. And it's also to trust your own judgment in a way, because whilst you, the individual, needs to do a lot of things, as you have done, you do need a good support crew around you. You can't do this on your own. And sometimes when people walk into the office at 9 o'clock, and we've got a lot of data on this, you don't know what's going on in their life. So the background story for a lot of these people is in fact that's the big kicker. What is really happening in their life? Because you can present the workplace somewhat artificially, but the data behind this individual and then how that individual impacts on their small team in the business is something that we need to really be mindful about.
Yeah. Righty spoke with me a lot over the years about the corporate athlete and the fact that all of us are preparing for the great endurance event, which is showing up for work, 8-10 hours a day or whatever it is for 5 days a week. And when you think about the level of preparation that an elite athlete goes through for maybe a 3-hour performance on a Saturday afternoon, when you compare that to what an executive has to do or what an entrepreneur has to do, that is emotionally and physiologically really difficult.
Absolutely. And I think also there's a lot of people that operate at a sub-optimal level for a long time because they know no difference. So what we try to bring to the workplace is to get some absolute objective data, to look at not just one aspect. So we look at your head, you know, how you're going in terms of anxiety, depression, those sort of things.
Yeah.
We look at your heart, because obviously you've got to be physically in shape. We look at your sleep patterns, which is one of the most destructive tools. If that's not on balance, you're not going to perform too well.
Yeah.
And we look at just how you blend in with your family and your infrastructure. So I think it's really complicated in a way, but we can break it down with some really good science. So we've got some objective levels, rather than this subjective, oh, it'll be okay, I'll wing it. You know, we turn up, haven't had much sleep, so we just can't perform at our best.
And I certainly know when we first started working together, you're sometimes not quite aware of the fog that you're moving around the world in. And when you do get some of those components right, and the fog lifts, you do tend to retrospectively look back and go, wow, that was, how on earth did I get through that?
And if you look at people that prepare well, they've got what I call a go-to place. They drop their anxiety. There's a calmness rather than a chaos. They may breathe more readily. They drop their heart rate. They do all the things that physically we know are beneficial to performance. They fuel the body well, because when we look at people and the crap that people pour down their throat and in their guts,
which we all do pretty effectively.
Sure do. We do that really well. We can't perform at our best because we've got this great V8 machine and we're putting bloody two-stroke motor fuel into it. Crazy.
So one of the, being an entrepreneur myself, having lots of small children and a few balls in the air, a few moving parts, I know that I'm not well prepared when my behaviour and my co-workers are maybe watching now thinking, yes, Scotty, we know. I start to get reactive. My awareness narrows. I lack focus, and I start catastrophising. And you start to live life 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in advance.
Well, I think you will get smaller. And if
it gets smaller and narrower and shorter.
And science and the data that we look at says that that's literally the flip side. You need it to be expansive. You need to identify that it will ebb and flow. You need to realise that preparation can be varied depending on what else is going on in your life and how much time you have. And if you look at some of the full-time athletes around the world, once their sleep patterns are affected, for example, the number of errors, they did a lot of work with the basketballers in the US. A lot of their errors are increasing, free throws go up, fouls go up. So they physically struggle. So, and that's what we've failed to realise in the workplace.
Oh, that's the NBA sleep study stuff. That is interesting. Very interesting. On the positive, when you do get some of this preparatory stuff right, I notice creativity goes up. Now, some of the people watching who are familiar with flow theory will immediately jump on this stuff. It's exactly that. But creativity goes up, awareness goes up, focus goes up, and all of a sudden, I as an entrepreneur become open to new ideas, more open to criticism and more aware.
I mean, you're just a better functioning human. And I think that brings with it an enormous amount of benefits, both not only in the workplace particularly, but certainly across life generally. So it's really tough to have a shitty life and still be really good at work.
Can you swear on this podcast?
I don't know.
I think we just did.
Swear on this one?
Carry on.
No. If that's a swear word for those people that are offended by that, I do offend people. But in a loving and a caring sort of way. So I guess what we're trying to say is that there's a balance that you need to really aim for, and the only way you can do that, I think, in a lot of cases, is to find out exactly where you are. So that's about science, that's about data, that's about getting information. So what? What are you going to do with that? And if you want an intervention, be very specific, particularly in the workplace.
So when we started working together all those years ago, we would catch up monthly and check in to see how diet, activity, and nowadays it's once a year, full set of bloods. We have a look at how's the machine performing, what's happening with cortisol, what's happening with iron levels, what's happening with general level of activity, and you can stay on top of it.
Yes, you can, and I think also the best way to do it is to appreciate that it takes time to perform well. You've got to give yourself the permission to stuff up a few times. You've got to give yourself permission to perhaps have some rough days, rough weeks. But I think long term, if you have a set of guidelines that actually keep you on track, gosh, you do a much better job.
So in the few minutes we've got left, we've talked a lot about preparation and how practical it is. Let's just talk briefly about what are the components, like what do you actually do? And I think I've considered many times over the journey what the bedrock of preparation is. And I have thought for many years that the bedrock of preparation was high quality sleep and sleep hygiene and all the rest of it. In recent years, I've come around to thinking that your inner practices, whether that be meditation, if you're of religious orientation, that becomes prayer, that those inner practices and that daily contemplation, whether it be 5 minutes or 20 minutes, but daily contemplation in meditation actually seems to drive everything else. And the reason sleep's no longer my bedrock activity is that when I meditate, I sleep better. What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on. I think when you look at the physical changes, and we've got information on head health and heart health and all these sorts of things. But if you look at what's happening in society generally, we are getting fatter. We have been getting fatter for years. And so I think it's time to not only have a consideration about some of the physical things, but also then to start thinking about, well, okay, am I really being kind to myself? Am I really keeping calm when I need to be? And taking time to actually take time. Because time is finite.
And it's physiologically very challenging to lose weight if that's your goal, if you are stressed and not sleeping well.
Well, you can't do it. It's impossible. The hormonal changes, and we've done a lot of work with biochemistry, for example, the hormonal changes just don't allow you to do that. So until you get your biochemistry right, you're not going to achieve some of the physical outcomes that we're actually looking at. And that's why it's interesting looking at elite sportsmen that can stay calm at the time when the pressure is really on. And we've had an Australian basketballer who's just been ridiculed in the press because
Paddy Mills.
Well, and Simmons, you know, like who you know, what's happened there?
Oh,
who
sorry,
knows?
Ben Simmons,
who knows? I mean, again, it's the background story. We don't know what's going on in that guy's life, but unfortunately, he performs in front of millions. Therefore, there's a million critics.
Yeah, that's right. So meditation's a bedrock. Sleep has got a lot of attention. Obviously, recently, I think everyone gets that. Let's just move straight through to diet. Now, the best diet advice I've ever got is from a dietitian was pack your own lunch.
It's like make your bed of a morning. Do something positive. Get your day off to a flying start. But because a lot of the food we eat, we don't actually know what's in it. And if you look at the changes with some of the staples, you know, if you look at the number of people now who are gluten intolerant, you know, so the irritants, both of your gut and gut hygiene as well as the other things, are really having a big influence. And the other thing very quickly is that we know he or she who is eating well and is managing that food intake and fluid intake make good decisions all day. Not just in the morning, not just in the afternoon, but they're making decisions all day. And they're fueled.
And they're not waiting until lunchtime to have breakfast?
There's no such thing as lunchtime or lunch hour. You know, like it's eat when you're hungry, eat well, eat readily, and you'll be amazed how your body loves that sort of process. So exercise goes without saying. G'day, Tony, you're back on.
Yeah, you look, when you started talking about meditation, I thought I'm going to give you guys another 5 minutes, but they won't let me do that. So make your last point and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, look, I'll wrap up really briefly. One of the parts we didn't get to was just setting your own priorities. And if I could leave everybody with one thing, it would be we work really hard at BrewHub on getting all of our people to place their own experience first. And when they do prioritise and really think broadly and are really aware of what their priorities are, all of a sudden, you know, working for BrewHub comes 6, 7 and 8 and back to a really healthy level. So, you know, when we are preparing, one of the components of preparation is to put your own experience first. And by definition, that is to look at your diary for the day and feel enthusiastic, feel light, and be looking forward to it. So I'll wrap up with that, Tony.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
That's fabulous. Thanks, David, and thanks, Graeme. It's been really quite a fascinating conversation, something I didn't expect, actually.
There you go, Tony. We're full of surprises.
We're going to talk about coffee.
No.
Fantastic. Thanks for that.